So, hello. I'm sorry for the
Good morning, ma'am.
interruption. Good morning.
Ma'am.
Good morning to all of you. A very good morning to
Good
all of
morning,
you.
ma'am.
So, let's try and once again begin from where we left off yesterday. Yesterday, I started doing the vowels with you, and I was explaining to you that in order to describe vowel sounds, you need to actually just indicate which part of your tongue is involved, whether it is the front or the center or the back. So generally, whenever you classify vowel sounds, you're merely and the second thing that you need to indicate is being raised and how high it is being raised. So in sounds like E and I, it's the front of the tongue that is being raised. For E, also it is the front of the tongue that is being raised. For A, also it is the front of the tongue that is being raised. Now, I don't think E and I are much of a problem for you because we have these sounds in our mother tongues. But when it comes to E, you need to be careful. As you know, we have a E ki matra and I ki matra. We also have an A ki matra and an A ki matra. But really, we don't have this E sound the way we would have it in bed, red, said, dead, led. All these sounds have the E sound, right? It is E. So if it is E, most of the time, what happens is that Indian speakers find it difficult to pronounce E. So instead of E, it generally becomes A. So if you want to say some of the errors that you will find in speech is that instead of saying he said something, somebody might say he said something or he read something when you want to say read. So if you want to say that something is red in color, you might say it is red in color because you're not accustomed to making use of the sound. Now, I'm not saying that this is a problem with all speakers. Some speakers may have that problem. So you need to be able to identify what is your problem area and make a conscious effort to change the way you utter these words or the way you pronounce these words. So then after e, you have a. Now, a is the sound that you have in cat, fat, rat. Again, I'm being interrupted. There's a phone call. Just a minute. Just give me 2 seconds, will you? Just a minute. Hello? Yeah. Mm, mm. academic. या डीन एकेडमिक के पास जा रहा है ना तो डीन एकेडमिक हाँ वो एकेडमिक सब्जेक्ट एरिया भी एकेडमिक है ठीक है I'm so sorry for the interruption. I'll get back now. So when we have a, when you're talking about a, this is the sound that you have in cat, rat, fat, mat, sat, and so on. So it is a. So one thing that you need to understand is that, as I was saying, it is how high you're raising it in the mouth. So when you say E, the front of the tongue is raised to as high in the mouth as it can possibly go without creating a closure. When you say it is slightly lower. When you say it is still lower. And when you say a, it is even lower still, right? So then after a, the next sound that you need to familiarize yourself is a. Now this is what you have in words like but, rut, cut, must, lust, dust. Everywhere, whether it is jump or jug, the sound is or judge. All these words have the sound. Now, in order to describe we say that it is a central vowel because we say it is the center of the tongue that is raised just a little bit. It's not raised too much. In fact, you would say it is below the half open position, meaning it is between the half open position. Now, as I was saying, you have different degrees to which you can raise the front of your tongue or the center of your tongue or the back of your tongue. As I was saying, the first thing you need to understand is which part of the tongue is involved, whether it is the front, center, or back. The next thing you need to consider is how high in the mouth it is being raised. Now, I think it is Ritika Somya who's presenting, so maybe you can scroll downwards and you can go down to the vowel chart because in this very document, I think you have the vowel chart here. No, it's not here. Go right to the end of this. Or maybe you don't have it, perhaps. Introduction. Go further, go further, go further. The place and manner, even still further down. Um, no, I think it stops there. Oh, so I think that was a different document. Yeah, exactly. Here. This is where I wanted you to mention. Yeah. Just bring that chart up still further. Yeah, yeah. This is what you can consider to be a cross section, right? So of the inside of your mouth, you might say. And here you have the indication of whether it is a front vowel or a central vowel or a back vowel, right? So when you are thinking of E, you will find that it is very close, very near the close position. When you're talking about it is a front vowel, but it is between close and half close. When you're talking about it is still further down, it is half close, between half close and half open. And when you're talking about it is still further down, right? It is closer to the half open position. And when you're coming to we know it is a central vowel between the half open and open. Now, perhaps it's not easy for you to understand just by focusing on this diagram. Perhaps I need to place the vowels in this diagram, and for that I need another document, which I'll try and make sure that I can present to you the next time. But for the time being, just remember this, that when you're talking about vowel sounds, you need to know which part of the tongue, front, central, or back, is involved. And you also need to know how high it is being raised or not being raised in the mouth. These are the issues that will determine or will help you to define the different vowel sounds. So as I was saying, there is E, there is I, there is E, there is A, and there is A. So in other words, we have these sounds as represented in beat, bit, bet, bat, but. all of them have the same, you can say they are all front vowels except for which we speak of as a central vowel. Now, after the next sound that I need to introduce you to is ah. Now we say, what is ah? It's just the long ah. And where do you find that you have to open your mouth, like when you go to the doctor also, you're asked to open your mouth, right? So you have to show your tonsils to the doctor. So you will open your mouth, right? You will be asked to open your mouth. And so you will uh, do the same action of ah, right? And ah is the sound that you have in words like cart, right? Start, mart, dart, dart. All of them have the long ah, and all of them are spelt with an R, right? But the R is not actually pronounced. It's just the R sound. The R is elongated. Now, when we speak of R, we say that it is a back vowel. You can say that R involves that the back of the tongue is just raised slightly. It's a back vowel, right? So we are saying that when you say ah, it is the back of the tongue that is just raised a little bit. Ah, ah. And when we go a little further, we speak of the next sound, which is aw, right? Aw. So we have ah, then we have aw, then we have o, then we have u, then we have oo, which are all back vowels. Now, so when you're thinking of the front vowels, just think of e, e, a, which is the central vowel. We'll come to other central vowels also, but at the moment, just remember And when you come to the back vowels, you have sounds like ah, o, o, u. So basically, for these vowels, you just need to remember that the back of the tongue is involved. Now, you feel when you actually utter these sounds, you can say that the back of the tongue is involved, and you can also say that they are hardly raised, like I have been saying for ah also. You say that it is hardly being raised, meaning you don't even notice that it is being raised in the first place. So that's why we say that ah is a back open vowel, because it is as low in the mouth as it can possibly be. It's hardly being raised at all when we say ah. So the same is true of O as well. Again, we need to know that it is the back of the tongue that is involved, which is raised to a slight degree. Not much, but it is raised. So you can say it is between it is closer to the open position, not the half open position, but it is closer to the open position. So maybe you find it a little confusing, but you can come to it gradually. At the moment, just focus on knowing which is the back vowel and which is the front vowel. Now, when you think of these, like even for this sound like ah, as I said in words like cart, start, tart, all these words have this ah sound. Then in addition, you have this O sound. Now, where O and O are concerned, there is a slight confusion because the Indian speakers find it difficult to utter this O sound. O sound. Now, in Hindi, if you go to see, we have an O ki matra, right? We have O ki matra, usko do, and we also have ow, right? Corn. Corn hai wahan pe, corn. But these sounds or these vowel sounds are not the o and the o that we have in the English language. So, for example, if we have COT, cot, o, o, cot, o. Now, o is a short vowel. O is its corresponding long form. But we don't have these forms in the English language. Sorry, we don't have these forms in our own mother tongues. So we often find it confusing. So often it is that you will find that for a sound like o, cot, right? Cot. Now, whether it is hot or cot or rot or lot or fog, right? Everywhere we have this o sound. Now, this is sometimes confused for o. So, if you want to say fog, you might say fog, right? If you want to say cot, you might say coat. But it depends. Depending upon which part of the country you come from, you will have different problems. Because you see that all our mother tongues definitely have an impact on the way we speak. So if we're not familiar with a particular sound, maybe if we belong to a different part of the country, we may not have a problem. But depending upon or, or where we come from and what is our mother tongue, we often have differences in pronunciation. So now it's interesting, you speak of this word, C-O-T, I said, is cot, right? He was sleeping on a cot. Now, another problem is that we are confusing between COT. We are not able to understand the difference between COT and CAUGHT, right? So CAUGHT is past tense of catch, right? If you have catch, its past tense is caught. But it is not to be spoken of, or we are not pronouncing it correctly if we speak of it as caught, if we say it the same way as we pronounce COT, because CAUGHT becomes caught, right? He was caught, right? And this caught is the same as the court, go to court, right? So if you go to court, going to court, and if you're talking about getting caught by the police, the pronunciation will be the same. Whether you say court or you say CAUGHT, the pronunciation of both these words is identical, right? Because you're making use of the long vowel O, right? It is O. So when you say O, it is long vowel O. When you say O, it is O. It is a short O. So O, the back of the tongue is higher, and O, it is lower. So when we say ah, o, oo, right? In all these sounds, we speak of all these sounds as back vowels. So please remember, if we are talking about front vowels, we are only interested in e, I, e, a. A is a central vowel. And the rest of the vowels, like ah, o, oo, they are all called back vowels. because it is the back of the tongue that is raised very slightly for ah and o. Oh, it is a little higher. Ooh, it is a little higher, and ooh, it is as high in the mouth as it can possibly go, right? Because when you speak, utter a vowel, the back of the tongue is raised very slightly. So it's not that it is uh, like you have to say that no, it is not raised at all. It is infinitesimally raised, but it is raised, right? But when you speak of a description of these sounds, if you're talking about ah, o, oo, you know that you have to speak of them as back vowels, indicating that the back of the tongue is raised, and it is raised just a little bit for ah and o. It is raised a little higher for o, and highest when it is o, oo. It is highest for oo. For o, it is still lower. So make sure that you don't confuse o with o, right? So that is one of the errors we tend to make. And the other problem area is this inability to differentiate between o and o. So generally what happens with Indian speakers is that we constantly make use of this o sound. Either we confuse it with o, or we use a uniform o sound for whether it is short or long. So as I was saying, it's interesting because even a word like quote, going to quote, has this long O. But at the same time, even the past tense of catch is to be pronounced not as short caught, but as long quote. The police caught him red-handed, right? It's a sentence, the police caught him red-handed. So it would not be pronounced the same way as the short cot, C-O-T. He slept on an iron cot in the veranda. So this would be the short O sound. So you have the short O and the long O. So you need to be able to differentiate between the two. And then we come to O, oo, 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 oo. Like we know that we have O, oo, we have uki matra as well as uki matra in Hindi. But when we're trying to differentiate between these two sounds in the English language, it's convenient to make use of words like full. Okay, if you're talking about full, full, and then the long oo is the sound that we have in pool, pool, oh, oo, full, oo, fool, tool, rule, cool. Everywhere you have ooh, ooh. And the short ooh is what you have in full, right? Bull. And there are so many other words which have this short ooh sound. So you need to differentiate between this ooh, ooh as well. So if you're placing it on the chart, you will find that ooh is high, but oo is the highest. Oh, oo is the highest. So if you go down, you can look at the symbols. You can go down and make sure that you're aware of the symbols. Let's go down to the vowel chart as well. This before that you have the vowel. Before the introduction, you have the list of pure vowels, right? Right at the top, you have in the beginning, you have the pure vowels. So you have E as in these, I as in bit, E as in bed, A as in bad, as in bus, as in card, O as in hot, and O as in old. So you see, even in A-L-L, it's not all, but all, all. Similarly, it's force, horse, right? Horse, force, coat, right? It is this long O. We find it a little difficult to utter the long O because we are more familiar, or it's easier to say O rather than O, right? But please and remember that all these three words, in fact, it's convenient to remember five words with all, force, horse, court, court. All of this has the long O sound. So you know that the symbol for the long O sound is just this horseshoe followed by two dots. Now please look at the symbols and you'll have to recall them, remember them, because otherwise you may end up in confusion, especially if you have to phonetically, if you've been asked to phonetically transcribe a list of words. So if you get a list of words and you know the symbols for the consonants and you know the symbols for the vowels, you should be able to phonetically transcribe any word that you come across, and that is to give anybody who speaks a hint, an understanding of how that particular word is to be pronounced. So please note how they mention o, a is just a, a followed by two dots. O is a horseshoe. Actually, it looks like a topsy-turvy A, letter A, but it when you're writing, you can just represent it with a horseshoe. Just as O, the longer O sound is represented by O, or that horseshoe followed by two dots, you can say the short O is just one horseshoe. So when you're writing, not typing, that is what is generally used for the O sound. And when we are talking about this O sound, when it appears in print, it is always the way it has been shown here, an A which seems to have been put upside down. That is how it is represented, as in hot, right? O as in hot. A, of course, comes later. Oh, no, we've already covered A. The fact that we have this long O in all, force, horse. All, force, horse. Then you have oo, 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 oo. So even if you have short o, please note that this is the same sound that you have in book, rook, took, look. Yeah, everywhere you have o, o. And even in words like full. So every time you may want to make use of this O sound, or where in Hindi we put this short U ki matra, we know that the symbol for it is just this isolated U. It is actually the capital U. Isolated capital U indicates the U sound. And when you have the small u followed by two dots, that is indicative of length. And you're actually talking about words like rule, tool, cool, fool, and so on, where you have the sound elongated. So that is what you can say about pure vowels. We have left actually just two sounds, uh, uh, uh. Now, how do we indicate uh, uh? We know that they are central vowels, right? And they occur quite close to the half open position, you might say. Or you could say that it is between half closed and half open, right? So These half open, close is as high as it can go, open is as low as it can go. The in between positions in the mouth are termed half close and half open. So it is just to help you be able to state exactly where in the mouth or to what level in the mouth a particular sound has been raised. So please note that in words like serve, where do you have the long sound? So whether you have girl, serve, curve, everywhere you find the long used. So whether it is girl, curl, twirl, everywhere you have the long being made use of. And when you have the short the short is actually in sounds like account, even if you're talking about the rose is red. The moment you say the rose is yet red, it is an sound. So the two remaining pure vowels which we haven't spoken of, which are central vowels. So just as in bus is a central vowel, in the same way and are also central vowels. So you need to know when to use the short and when to use the long Now it's interesting that the short is the most commonly used sound. In fact, we are constantly making use of right? Now, for example, if you're talking about, we've never made use of was, right? We say was. He was doing this, he was doing that. Because this is the unaccented abbreviated form of WAS. Otherwise, we never say he was eating his breakfast. We say he was eating his breakfast. We don't say he ordered a box of chocolates. A box of chocolates becomes a box of chocolates. We don't say he had an accident. We say he'd had. He'd had. He had. He had. He had had. He had had. He had had. He had an accident. So had also becomes a. Was becomes was becomes a. So the idea is that this is the short version, the abbreviated version. So we are constantly making use of this sound. We are going to do this. We are going to do that. So we don't say we are going on a picnic or we are going to have class. Do we say that? So when we are talking in fluid speech, we always rush over these sounds. And that is when we make use of this short sound, the maximum. So we are going. We don't say we are going. We don't say we are going. We say we are going. That's what I mean to say. So whether you want to say we are going, or whether you want to say he had, he had, he'd had, he'd, he had, everywhere you make use of this he had had an accident. Had an accident, right? So whether it is has or had or are, you constantly abbreviate it to indicate this sound, which is the short vowel even in box of chocolates, right? You have this sound. And you also have like if when you start learning transcription, you'll understand that this is the sound that is most often used. Like for example, if you're talking about where would I give you an example of this? if you had a word like bottle, right? You're speaking of a bottle, bottle of wine. You're talking about, you won't even say bottle of wine. You'll say bottle of wine. So between bot and l, it is not that it is al, it is bottle. It is just this short a bottle of wine. So again, you're making use of this short vowel. So in fact, it stands by itself often. It is the most abbreviated because whenever we speak has, we want to say has or had or were, we end up saying uh. This is this short vowel uh. And we always find that it is never accented. That is why even in a word like bottle, you just indicate the sound, no doubt, but it's not a problem area at all. Even in a word like button, right? How do you phonetically transcribe button? So you have b, you have you have t, and you have n. In between, you have a slight So between t and n, you have this slight sound that comes even there. So whether it is button or whether it is bottle, again you have this sound. Now think of a word like yes. Now in hope. Now that is, what was the word you just said? But I just be repeated. What did you say? Turtle, right? Turtle. I was thinking of something else. Yes, in turtle also you have it. Like for example, no, not there. Like if you have HOTEL, it is not, this is where you need to note the differences. It is not hotel there, but it becomes hotel, right? It is not hotel, though the word spelling is HOTEL. What will it become? Hotel. So the first sound is this h, and tell is the a sound. Yes, what about Vivekanand? You're talking about but? But is definitely this sound that you have in but, dust, lust, just, jump, jug. It is the sound which, the symbol for which is the inverted B. You have it indicated here in your list of symbols. We said that it was a central vowel, right? The sound that you have in bus, right? That is up. That is different from as you have in a box of chocolates and so on. The sound that we have even in bottle or button. The second sound in bottle, button, right? Now you will also find this word in, for example, a word like which has two syllables. If you're talking about HUS, right? BAND. Now it is not hus and band, right? So it's not husband, it ends up being husband, right? It is husband. The S is also pronounced with a Z. So it is husband. So band is this very sound, it becomes husband, husband, right? Even a word like BREAK and FAST. This word is also mispronounced often by Indian speakers because we are not familiar with the manner in which this sound is to be used. So we have, for example, it is not break fast, though the spelling says break and fast. We don't say break fast, we actually say break, right? Break, eh, break, and fast becomes fast. Breakfast, breakfast. So that which comes in first is again this short sound. So it would be an interesting exercise for all of you to, even when you come across a piece of writing, you just read it. Even if you read a single paragraph, you will find that the maximum time you're making use of this schwa sound, that is this short sound, right? And you should be able to distinguish this short sound from the other sounds like as you have in bus and just and so on. The sound is very different. And when you're talking about the long sound, you know that that is what you have in words like girl and curl and twirl and so on. And even in words like, for example, serb, right? Here also you have long and even the long sound, and even in words like dessert, right? Uh, it is whether you're talking about dessert, the sweet that comes, or you're talking about desert, right? Even when you're talking about an isolated desert, right? Where there is no humanity as well. Even there, you make use of the short rather than any others. Sorry, for dessert or desert, it is the long sound. Desert also, it is a long sound. But when you're talking about sound like even for serve, it is the long sound. But the short sound is what you have in words like was and his, all the abbreviations that we make use as or any other sound available. So I hope these are clear. So these are just the 12 pure vowel sounds. We are just have been trying to cover up which are the 12 pure vowels. Because if you remember, we are talking about 20 vowel sounds. So out of these 20 vowels, we have 12 pure vowels and all the rest are diphthongs. So if you're talking about the pure vowels, you can count them on your fingers. You have the e, I, E, A. Then you have A. Then you have A. Then you have O, or rather O. You have O and then O. If you're going from the lowest, if you're trying to follow the vowel chart, then we will say that first after, it depends upon the back of the tongue. So back of the tongue is lowest when we say ah, slightly higher when we say o, then still higher when we say o, and then high as it can possibly go in the mouth, whether it is o, oo, o. You know that it is the back of the tongue. All these vowels are the back or are known as back vowels because of the back of the tongue being raised. So o, oo, these are sounds that we need to familiarize ourselves with as the back vowels. And finally, again we come to which are the central vowels. So just as we have as in judge being a central vowel, in the same way, they are both central vowels. So you need to be able to identify these sounds in the different words that you come across. So you do require a lot of phonetic transcription where you make a conscious effort to reproduce these sounds the way they are meant to be spoken. So especially with the weak form, you need to understand that there are innumerable words that make use of this sound. Innumerable words, even when we make use of the long sound. But when we're talking about the short sound, then we can say that it is the central vowel, right? So these are the 12 pure vowels that we have studied so far. So now the next section that we need to deal with is the diphthongs. Now we either speak of them as diphthongs or we speak of them as vowel glides. We speak of them as vowel glides because they involve a change in the position of the tongue within the mouth. So from one position, it goes to the other. Now here too, you will find that often when we speak, we tend to allow our mother tongue to constantly interfere, to constantly decide how we utter a particular sound. Most of the time, it is something that is happening subconsciously or unconsciously. You're not even aware that you are speaking in a particular way because that's the way the sound comes most naturally to you. Right? So now, when we think of the vowel glides, or the diphthongs, the first two sounds that, or let us put it as three sounds, because there are three movements actually towards the A sound. We already spoke of them glides, as glides, right? So the tongue moves from one position to the other within the mouth. So when the final position is A, you have A, right? I, oi. So there are three diphthongs where the movement is towards A, right? So if we are saying a word like A, I, oi, A, I, oi. When you utter these sounds, the movement is towards the A sound. Now, when do we say A? That's interesting that we're not familiar with A at all because it doesn't come naturally to us. So we need to understand that in the English language, there's a scarcity of this A sound, right? So when we speak, we might say Ray, right? But in the English language, there is no A. It is always a diphthong. So even if we say ABC, whereas a native speaker will not say the first letter of the alphabet is A, he'll say it is A. There's a movement. It's a diphthong. There's a move from one position to the other. So that is why he speaks of it as A, A. So A involves a change in position from one to the other, and it is spoken of as a diphthong. The movement is towards A. A. Like, for example, even if we say the rate is too high, I might say the rate is too high because I'm familiar. He was late, rate, fate had other things to say. Yes, but the native speaker of the English language will never say fate, late, rate. What will he say? Fate, rate, late, right? Again, you were late to class. Again, you have failed class, right? Fail, A. So it's not fail, but fail. It's not late, but late. It's not rate, but rate. So these are the fact you need to register this, that where we make use of pure vowels A, the native speaker of the language always makes use of a diphthongal glide. So a diphthongal glide involves A, it's a diphthong, right? But if you're making use of Indian English, it will be a pure vowel. It will be merely A. Then you have I. You can have I in bite, light, right, tight, fight. There are in. There's no problem so far as I is concerned. And the same is true of oi. Oi is a sound that we have in words like boil, toil, foil, coil. All of them have oi, oi, oi. So all of them have a reference to oi there. So there are three movements towards the I sound. Then you have O. You have two movements.
Hello.
Ma'am, you are not audible.
I don't know what happened. There was a loss that I lost my connection. Please remember that, yeah, there are two movements towards O, as in, for example, O and ow, right? So where do you have O? In words like road, load, now code. Now we're not familiar with this because we pronounce it plain and simple road, load, code, right? We made use of a pure vowel O, where they make use of a diphthong O. So when you're saying road, we are unfamiliar with the sound, right? But the native speaker of the language will always make use of this. So you can see the symbols are already there. You need to learn the symbols because if you have a word like gate, it is not the way we say gate, but it would, because we make use of pure vowel, right? But the native speaker will say a, so it becomes gate, right? Similarly, you have bite, bite is fine. Oi is fine. O as in home, right? O as in home. And ow as in house, right? Ow as in house. Ow. There are two movements towards the O sound. But so far, you just need to be careful about A and O. So where we say A, they say A. Where we say O, they say O, right? So the road to Jamshedpur is very beautiful. The road between Jamshedpur and Ranchi is very good. So you speak of it as road, road. Not, we don't find it easy to. So even if we say road, it is fine. But you need to know that the difference between in the way we speak and the way the native speaker speaks is basically this. So we are making use of the pure vowel O, but when they speak, they will be making use of the diphthong O. So it is road and not road. So similarly, just as we have two movements towards O, that is home and house, please remember these symbols, because if you have to make phonetic transcription, you need to remember these symbols, right? So how do you say O, A, O, I, Oi, and ear, air, and ur. Ear, air, ur. Ear, air, ur. Now these are pure vowels. Sorry, pure vowels. The way we speak, as I said, we often make use of it as pure vowels, but when they speak, they always make use of diphthongs. Now, for ear, it is okay if the word is fear, or tear, or leer, or dear, or cheer. We're making use of ear. It's fine. But there are so many words where we do not make use of ear, whereas the native speaker makes use of ear. So we, for example, a word like HERO, right? How would we pronounce it? Hero. ZERO becomes zero. But when the native speaker makes use of these words, he always makes use of a diphthong. So if you're saying hero, it becomes hero. Zero becomes zero. Hero, zero. Hero, zero. Right? Now we're not familiar with it. We're not going to change now and make zero into zero. But the fact is that when you're talking about the native speaker of the language, he always makes use of ear, right? So it's not zero, but zero. It's not like even other words, like let me think of another ear, apart from hero and zero. I can't think of at the moment, but definitely there are other words also where you can, yeah, the word that I was trying to remember is this word, like we say, no, now, where is not ear, right? So here too, where you say, now since you've mentioned WEAR, I need to clarify where we say where address. So it's a pure vowel, but they would say where, right? Even AIR becomes air, tear, where, right? Air. So it becomes air, the next symbol as an air, right? But the word that I was trying to recall was actually SERIOUS. SERIOUS. We would always speak of it as serious, right? Serious. So and so is serious. He's admitted in hospital, right? But the native speaker